How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to an episode here on Let's Put Twitter. As always, I'm Ethan, or no coder, your favorite underqualified senior software engineer. And as always, if you guys do want access to a private repository, there's a link in the description down below that'll walk through exactly how to do that. Today, we're going to go ahead and continue working on the create new message modal. We're going to go ahead and try to wrap it completely up today by making it so we can click create group and add people in there. And I also missed episode, it grays out any group messages whenever you start adding people. So we'll also work on that. And then we're also going to go ahead and do a little bit of refactoring that'll help us out in the future for next episode and beyond. That being said, let's go and hop into the code and get to work. And we might also need to go ahead and create a couple conversations here. So like I mentioned, let's go ahead and create a couple conversations. So I'm going to make one between me and Jerry, and you'll see why a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and make a conversation between me and Rick. Let's go ahead and make one between like me and Morty. And then let's go ahead and just do a couple group conversations. So 5 1 2 and then 5 1 2 3 4, maybe just add a few people in there. There we go. That should be good to go. So let's hop into the code. So today we're going to be primarily working inside of the modal and then a little bit of the slices as well. First off, what we need to go and do is we need to go into our utils and then into our global interfaces, and we need to go down to where we have our global interfaces and make a small change, because whenever we have a group message, we could actually have a profile picture, or not profile picture, a conversation picture, and we can also have a conversation name. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in here really quick as optional. So I'm going to go ahead and say conversation picture is an optional, and this will be a string. It'll be like the URL. We also have a conversation name, which is optional string, and this will come in handy a little bit later on whenever we're trying to set up some other things, maybe next episode. And then now let's go ahead and hop into our MessageSlice to set up so we can actually create some group stuff. Inside of our MessageSlice, underneath like our pop-up open, I don't know exactly where I put this. It might have actually been under conversation open. We're going to go ahead and just put up create group. And this is going to be a Boolean. So it's going to be whether or not we're creating a group. And then once again, below our pop-up open, we'll go ahead and say create group. We'll start out as false. And then we'll come down to our thunks or actions, whatever we want to call them. And I believe I put this, let's see here. I said line here. So we're going to go ahead and say toggle create group. And this is just going to go ahead and take in a state. We don't need an action or anything in this. And then let's go ahead and put our comma before we forget. State is equal to ... state. And then we're going to say create group is equal to not state dot create and then group. So we're just going to go ahead and toggle it on and off. We'll go ahead and return our state. Now we just need to go ahead and return this. So I'm going to go ahead and come down to the bottom here, and beside our toggle pop-up, we'll go ahead and add toggle create group like so, and we do not want to call it there. So now we can go ahead and click on that create group in a second and go ahead and toggle that. There's also one more thing that I want to fix. If you remember last episode, whenever we fulfilled our open conversation, it was basically duplicating the conversations. So let's go ahead and fix that while we're in here as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to delete this conversations part here. And instead of just adding the conversation to the beginning, we're going to first check to see if the conversation exists. And if it doesn't, we're going to go ahead and add it. So we're going to say if not state.conversations, and I spelled conversations wrong, conversations.sum. And we're going to go ahead and say C, and then C.conversation.id is equal to action.payload.conversation.id. So if we contain some conversation with this, if we don't contain some conversation with the conversation ID, we'll say state is equal to ... state, and then we'll go ahead and say conversations is equal to action.payload and then ... state.conversations. So if it doesn't exist, we'll go ahead and add it in. If it already exists, we won't add it in, and then that won't duplicate our conversations like we were saying before. So that's good to go. So now let's go ahead and set up like the group, create group logic. We're going to start out first inside of our create message modal content. So let's hop in there. So first we need to go ahead and bring in const dispatch. So I'm just going to go ahead. I like to put it right underneath our state. So const dispatch is an app, dispatch is equal to use dispatch. We're going to need to go ahead and dispatch that toggle event basically. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and put it below our search for users. We're going to go ahead and say const handle create group. And then this is just going to be a simple arrow function. And then in here, it's going to go ahead and dispatch, and you guessed it, toggle create group, like so. So that is simple enough. And then all we have to do in here is we need to go down to where we have our create group button. So right here, and we want it like the div or the wrapper icon, I believe is what we want it. We're going to go ahead and say on click is equal to, and then handle create group. So nothing too crazy here. We do need to make like one CSS change eventually, but it looks like we circle back around to that. But first, before we do that, we need to go ahead and work on the top bar, because the top bar, instead of saying select user something, it says create group and it has like a back arrow. So let's go ahead and go into our top here. So on our top, we're going to go ahead and import a arrow back icon, import arrow back icon, because sometimes these don't actually show up from. And then we'll go ahead and say at MUI material icon, and we're going to go ahead and say arrow back. It's because sometimes I copy these straight from the website and sometimes I don't, so that's why they're different sometimes. So now we're going to go ahead and add in some states. So we already have user state, we already have conversation state. What we're going to go ahead and add is create group here. So let's go ahead and say const create group is equal to use selector, and this is going to be state, and then we'll say state.message.create group, like so. And then we need to come down and also handle a back, basically. So we're going to say const maybe handle back is equal to an arrow function. This is just going to go ahead and dispatch toggle create group as well, and this will take us back to the regular old page or modal, so to speak. And now this is where things are going to get a little bit finicky. So underneath here, we have our top right. We're going to go ahead and wrap this guy inside of curly braces, like so. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this part in curly braces, like so. And let me see what's going on here. I might have went too far. Yes, I did. We only want to wrap specifically the wrapper div. So let me fix that. There we go. And then let's go ahead and just clean this up a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and say create group, maybe, question mark. So if we have a create group, we're going to say div class name equal to create dash message dash modal. I believe we still call it the same, top and close wrapper. But this one on click will actually equal to handle back. And then inside of here, let's go ahead and fix this up. Let's go ahead and add this so it stops complaining. And then instead of close, we'll have arrow back, and then SX equal to, and I believe we still just say font size is equal to 20 px. So if we are in create group, what we'll go ahead and do is show the arrow back instead of the close icon, and it'll take us backwards. And then we need to also go ahead and wrap the div for the h2. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this guy. And I guess this isn't a div, we just need to wrap the h2, and we're going to do some work on this one as well. So here we'll also say create group question mark. So here we're going to have a div with a class name equal to, and this will be create dash message modal top, and then I'm going to call this, and I guess I go ahead and call this group heading. I probably should have called this like group message something or something else. I don't know. I don't really love the name of this, but let's go ahead and add in the colon there. So here, once again, I'll have an h2 with a class name equal to create. I don't know what happened there. Let me fix this. Create dash message modal top header. So we're still going to have a header here. Inside, we're going to go ahead and say create a group. And then below that, we're going to have a P, the class name equal to create dash message dash modal top dash subheader. And then inside here, we're going to go ahead and say add people. So we need to go ahead and add that if we are in a create group. And I believe that's all the changes we need to make inside here. Obviously, we need to go ahead and style this. I technically don't think we need this create modal group heading class on this because I don't think we actually ever use it. We just need to go ahead and group these together so they're not side by side. So what we need to actually go ahead and do is we need to create this class for create message modal top subheader. That way it doesn't have a massive amount of margin and stuff. So let's go ahead and hop into our CSS and fix that up. So let's just go ahead and go down below our top header here and paste that guy in. And then we're going to go ahead and say margin is 0. We'll go ahead and say padding is 0. We'll have a font dash size of 13px, font dash weight of 400. Whoops. And then we'll also have a color of pound 657786, and that should be good to go. So now I just want to go ahead and make sure that this is working and we didn't miss something or break anything. So let's go ahead and hop into the front end and just make sure whenever we click on create group, it actually pops up. So let's just give this a refresh because I never refreshed after we created those conversations. If we click on this, we should have some conversations. If we click on create group, it says create a group, add people, and we can go ahead and like click on people and it still works. We can go back, new message, everything's good to go. Now the thing is, whenever we click on this, these should basically end up being grayed out and you shouldn't be able to click on them. So we need to go ahead and work on some logic to do that as well. And then after that, we'll go ahead and do some refactoring and wrap up the episode. So let's go ahead and hop back into the code and get it so we can gray these out and disable these buttons. Once again, we're going to go ahead and go into the create message user card here. And inside the create message user card, we're going to go ahead and create a function under const selected called const disabled. So const disabled, and it's going to do something similar. It's going to calculate whether or not to disable this. We're going to say if our message state dot conversation users dot length is greater than 0 and our users dot length is greater than 1, we're going to go ahead and return true. So there's more than one person inside the conversation you're trying to click on, let's go ahead and get rid of it. We're also going to go ahead and say if message maybe state dot create group and users dot length is greater than 1. And probably we don't need the create group one anymore. I had a different logic a little bit before this, so we might not even need this one. We'll go ahead and test it out without adding it and I can delete it later. But if these two cases aren't the case, we'll go ahead and return false like so we can go ahead and disable it. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we need to come down to about line 52, which let's see here. It's not going to be line 52. It's going to be inside conversation clicked. So this should definitely be in here where we're creating the new conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and say else if, and we're going to go ahead and say users.length is greater than 1. And we're going to go ahead and say not disabled, like so. And I'll double check and hopefully this works and everything, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to be. And then we need to go ahead and come down here a little ways. Again, I don't know how these got so messed up. These are not the right lines in my notes, but it is what it is. So we need to come down to where we are handling the conversation or the user card here. So we have class name equal to this. We can go ahead and wrap the class name inside of curly braces, and we're still going to have the user card. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to wrap these in backticks. This is going to get a little bit messy. We're going to say $ curly brace, and we're going to say disabled ? So if it's disabled, we're going to say create message dash user dash card disabled. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and say create dash message dash user dash card active. So we'll go ahead and make those classes in a second. And I think that's all we need to do here. So let's go ahead and hop into the CSS and make these classes. So what we're going to go ahead and do is instead of having this hover right here, we're actually going to go ahead and call this create message user card active dash hover. We'll also go ahead and create message user dash card dash not deactive disabled. There we go. And then here it's going to background color. So background color RGBA, and this will be 0, 0, 0, 0.1 like so. So that should basically be good. Let's just go ahead and double check that this is also working as we expect. So now you can see whenever we have someone selected, it goes ahead and grays them out. And then same thing here. So I think this is also why I need to add to create group, because this should gray out no matter what. If we click on create group, now you can see it doesn't gray them out. So let's go back into the code and fix that. So if we come back up here now, I'm gonna go ahead and delete these comments and go ahead and hop back into our front end. Now, if we click on create group, you can see those two are clicked out, grayed out. You can't click on them exactly how it should be. Cool. So that is basically this wrapped up. Now, the last couple things I want to go ahead and do is just set up a couple of utils that we can reuse in other components, as well as also making it so we can reuse this profile picture component, because it's going to be used other places as well. And that'll go ahead and make us so the more complicated episode next week or next episode won't be as bad and as long. So let's go ahead and hop back into the front end and start refactoring here. So the first thing I want to do is we want to go ahead and bring the following text, generate following text, and generate nickname into a utility file. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and open up our Explorer here, and inside of messaging, I'm going to go ahead and make a utils slash utils.tsx. Let's go ahead and paste these in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and, just to be quick about this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this as well. And it's going to complain, obviously, but we'll fix it. So let's go back into our utils, and we need to make a couple of changes here. So let's first import a couple things. We're going to go ahead and import check and following. We're also going to go ahead and import our user from our global interfaces. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we need to pass in our users, which is a user array. We need to pass in our following, which is a user array. We need to pass in our followers, which is a user array, and then this should be good to go. We just need to go ahead and fix this up so that instead of user state.following, it just passes in following, and instead of user state.followers, it just passes in followers. And we can also go ahead and say this returns a string for the heck of it. So let's go ahead and say returns a string. We're going to do something similar inside of our generate nickname. Here, instead of generate nickname, we're going to actually rename this to generate conversation name to be more inclusive. This is going to take in our users, which is a user array, and it's going to take in a conversation name, which is a string or undefined. And we'll kind of fix that up in a second, and this will return a string. And then this should also be fine, other than the fact that it's mad because we don't have a return at the very bottom, which is kind of silly. We have an else, but we'll go ahead and add the return there. We'll go ahead and add a return here. Also, I'll go ahead return like that. Let's go ahead and format this so it's prettier, and then let's go ahead and return, and let's go ahead and return. So actually, I think I also changed this to a function. So say not return, export, and then function, I believe is what I have it as. Clean this up a little bit, make it look a little bit prettier, like so. Do the same thing here. So I'll export this one as a function. I don't know, I just like it being a function inside of util classes like this or service classes. So go ahead and do this, clean this up a little bit, make it look nicer, and then we'll go ahead and bring it in to our component. I believe that looks pretty good. Let's hop into our component again. Now, obviously, this is going to be upset with us because we don't have those functions anymore. So here, instead of generate nickname, this is going to actually be generate conversation name, not text, generation or conversation name. We're going to pass in users. We're going to pass in conversation name, which gets passed in earlier on, which we might need to look into actually passing properly, but we're going to import that from the utils. And then we'll go ahead and do our generate following text, which is still the same. So this is going to be users, user state dot following, and user state dot followers. Whoops, I accidentally uppercase that. Followers, like so. Then we need to also go ahead and import this, not like that. I guess I can make something bad into good if I go ahead and say generate following text. Fix that. And let's just scroll down, make sure this is still looking okay, which we need to still add it one more place, I believe, actually. Yep, here. So generate following text, pass in our users, pass in our user state dot following, and pass in our user state dot followers. And I need to think what we're actually looping through here and what is wrong with this user state.followers. Let's double check our generateFollowingText and make sure I didn't mess something up here. It's because I accidentally put this as an empty array instead of a user array. Let's go ahead and fix that. Let's check it out again. And there we go. Now it's happy. So let's just make sure that this is working as we expect before moving on to the last thing I want to do. Let's just give this a refresh. Go ahead and click on this guy and it looks good. So right now we're not passing any conversation names in here because we haven't worked on the messaging page, but eventually we'll go ahead and do that. But this looks good. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to go and extract this user profile picture / conversation picture into its own little component. That way we can use it all over the place. So let's go and hop into the code and do that as well. This one should also be pretty quick because we're just going to go ahead and copy paste it from our code below. So once again, like I said, we're just going to steal this PFP container and basically steal the CSS. So let's go ahead and I guess go and create a new component first. So go ahead and say create, and actually I don't want to call it create. I just want to call this message conversation picture / message conversation picture.tsx, and go ahead and create a message conversation picture.css. Let's just go ahead and do the basics. So go ahead and import React from React. We'll go ahead and import our default PFP from .. all the way to assets. So we'll go to assets / and then this is default _ PFP.webp. And then we'll also go ahead and just import our / message conversation picture.css, which is going to go ahead and yoink in a second. Export const message conversation picture is a React .fc, and this is going to take in users, which is a user array. I probably should have set this up as a prop, but it is what it is. We're going to have a conversation picture maybe, which is going to be a question mark string, going to be optional equal to, and then we'll have our users in conversation picture. Maybe we'll have a conversation picture. There we go. And we'll go ahead and return. And for now, I'm just going to do this, and it's going to be mad at us, but it is what it is. We'll fix it in a second. So let's go ahead and grab the logic and stuff. Let's go back into our create message user card here. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and grab this generate PFP because we're going to need this as well. So let's go ahead and delete that. Let's go back into our profile picture or our conversation picture. I'm going to go ahead and just paste this guy here. Go ahead and fix that up. So there is one thing we need to go and do. Instead of create message user card PFP, it's just going to be message conversation picture PFP, and then the same thing here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and then go ahead and paste it right here. So once again, it'll be message picture PFP, and then let's go ahead and grab the code for this. So once again, I'm going to come down to here and I'm going to grab the create message user card PFP. We're going to go ahead and delete that. Let's go back into our profile picture. So this is what we're going to go ahead and return. So let's go ahead and do this, paste it in there. Then all we need to go ahead and do is just clean up some of this stuff. So here, instead of create message user card PFP, it's going to be message conversation picture. And then here, instead of create message user card PFP, to be message conversation picture PFP, like so. And then let me just double check a couple things here. I know that there's a couple issues that I had, but I think everything else looks fine. And it might have just been I imported the default PFP incorrectly or something, but I think everything else looks pretty good here. So let's go ahead and bring in the CSS. So to do that, we're going to go into our message conversation user CSS. We're going to go and grab the PFP container as well as a user card PFP. So let's go ahead and get rid of that out of there. And let's go back into our conversation picture. We're simply going to paste this, and we're going to go ahead and change this to, instead of message user card, it'll be message dash, and let's go ahead and get rid of this. And this will be conversation dash picture. And then same thing here. So to create message, it'll be message dash and then conversation. So let's go and get rid of this. Conversation dash picture maybe dash PFP, like so. Now it's gonna go ahead and bring this in. So let's go back into our message user thing again. So now instead of having that big div, we're gonna go ahead and say message conversation picture. We'll pass in users equal to users. And we'll go ahead and say conversation picture is equal to conversation picture if it got passed. And let's see, that looks good. Now let's just make sure everything else looks good as well by opening up our app and just checking it out. So let's just refresh, just make sure the CSS and everything is working properly. Go ahead and open it up and you can see we still have our profile pictures and that is nice and extracted away. And then now we can go ahead and use all this stuff that we did this episode and next episode, because next episode is going to be pretty lengthy with creating some new stuff inside of our messages pop-up. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and thank you all for watching. If you did like it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Everything helps out here at the YouTube algorithm. I've been absolutely grinding these out. And if you guys do want to see where we started from absolute nothing to get to the point we are now, there is a playlist either linked down below or somewhere on my channel to go ahead and go through all of those. With that being said, I appreciate you all for watching. This has been Ethan Encoder. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.